States to get arrested for smoking crack. I've just been looking at a video, the video that makes your hair stand on end, a video shot by himself of the son of the President of the United States of America, arguing with a hooker about exactly how much crack cocaine they've got on the scale. They're so out of it, they are arguing about grams or ounces. I'm not sure which. I have never seen crack cocaine until this day when I saw the son of the President of the United States openly glorying in his possession of 20, is it grams? Is it ounces? How would I know? But it was 20.7 on the scale, which, as far as I can work out, is a crime in the United States of America. Now, the video evidence and the clear address at which the miscreant could be tracked down, you would have thought would have had the boys in blue in the United States on the move, but not so far. Of course, there's always a video. And up popped a video of then Senator Joe Biden, making it absolutely clear as to the only suitable punishment for people smoking rocks of crack cocaine. 5 years in prison, said Senator Joe. Of course, at that time, he fully expected any of the miscreants involved to be black. And even though if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you're not really black, Joe Biden is responsible for the mass incarceration of millions of black Americans over the decades that he has spent in the US Senate since passing the crime and punishment bills for which he had lead responsibility. He's not crying for a 5-year prison sentence for his own son, Hunter Biden, and neither is any of the mainstream media in the United States. As a matter of fact, it has yet to appear on CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, CBS News, PBS, all the WXYZs of the American mass media have acted as if this video shot by Hunter Biden was as much a piece of Russian disinformation as the content of his laptop was. This is the content of his telephone. There are apparently, I don't know the measurements, but megabytes by the thousand of images and other damning information on Hunter Biden's phone. So that's the laptop and the phone that have been first dubbed Russian disinformation, secondly, completely ignored by the mainstream media in a way that they would not have done if, say, Donald Trump Jr. had been the guy, or arguing with a hooker over whether or not it's 20.7 or 20.11 and whether the weight of the bag was involved in the purchase and so on. Or it had been any member of Donald Trump's family. If it had been any member of any other politician's family, except maybe the Clinton crime family. Now, this is becoming a pattern. Damning information to which the American public had the right to know is being systematically suppressed, not just by the mainstream media, but by the big tech dictatorship, which is forcing more and more of us either to self-censor or out of the public square altogether. No wonder Elon Musk has turned tail and fled the hoaxers of Twitter, who wouldn't even give a man who was ready to give them $44 billion for their company the true facts about the number of fake accounts, bots, government bots, and government front bots that are spewing out disinformation about other people outside the prevailing orthodoxy, as well as ruthlessly suppressing information, true information, to which the people have a right. This is a dark and sinister game, because for many hundreds of millions, maybe billions of our people, they are oblivious to the fact that these games are being played. Because what you don't know, of course, you can't make a judgment on. And that, of course, is one of the things I've been saying from the beginning about the Ukraine war. If you don't know how badly the Ukraine war is going for NATO, then how can you make a valued judgment on whether the policy being followed by your government is the right policy or not? And the reason why you don't know how badly the war is going is that you are being systematically denied access to the truth about the war in Ukraine. Who knows? I may be cut off this platform right now for adumbrating these obvious truths, self-evident to any sentient, thinking human being. We need to know all the information that is out there if we are to make judgments about who's right and who's wrong. Now, Hunter Biden smoking crack with prostitutes is, in a way, not my business. It's an American story, an American affair. He's all yours, USA. We want nothing to do with them. It's your business whether he's prosecuted or not, or whether he's not prosecuted. But if he had a black face, he definitely would be behind bars by now. It's your business. But what your president, Joe Biden, does is definitely my business. The brazenly obvious signs of not mental decline, but mental collapse of the president of the United States, the so-called leader of the so-called free world, who's carrying around with him a suitcase with buttons in it, which can bring about the end of the planet and everybody and everything on it. That's my business. That your president, not asking on the tarmac in Israel today, what do I do now? That's what any senile dementia patient of 80 years old would say. Not playing pin the donkey without a blindfold on a poor guy getting a medal in the White House the other night, where Biden put the medal the wrong way round, nearly choked the man who didn't know whether he should tell the president that the medal's supposed to go on the front, not hang down the back of his jacket. Again, that's what any senile dementia patient of his age would do. No, I'm talking about President Biden's visit to the powder keg of the Middle East. I'm talking about the shameful, shocking Mrs. Malaprop performance that I've just watched him do with his sunglasses on, having to read from paper that was flickering in the wind, no idiot cards, no teleprompter, nobody feeding the words into his ear. He could not enunciate the simple fact that he was going to Yad Vashem to commemorate the horror of the Holocaust. He said he was going to somewhere else indecipherable to honor the Holocaust rather than to revisit the horror of the Holocaust. In a 30-second video, he made at least 15 mistakes, some of them serious mistakes. So what else is he going to mess up on the battlefield of the Middle East? Why is he there? He's there to try and encourage the ethical oil production of Saudi Arabia. That's his real number one goal. We can't touch unethical Russian oil. We're going to have to improve the supply of ethical Saudi oil instead. That's his real purpose, number one. Number two, it is to try and bring about a fusion in military and strategic affairs between Israel and Saudi Arabia, the so-called Middle East NATO. They've gone mad, these people. Not only is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization now well and truly occupied in the Indo-Pacific region, Biden is seeking to enlist Jordan, Israel, and Saudi Arabia in a new Middle East NATO front, this time aimed not at Russia and not at China, but at Iran. The same Iran, a nuclear deal with which, under President Obama, Biden championed, the same Iran that Biden said in his election campaign he would restore the Iran nuclear deal. Now he wants to make a new NATO in the Middle East, ending 65 years of Saudi Arabian non-recognition of the state of Israel and putting Israel and Saudi Arabia into the same army, navy, and air force. What could possibly go wrong when it's being piloted by a guy who doesn't know he's put a medal the wrong way round on a recipient's neck in the White House? What could possibly go wrong leaving these ultra-fragile international military and political affairs in the hands of a man who's drooling in front of your eyes on your television screen? He's drooling like an idiot, an imbecile. He should be in a care home. Instead, he's on the world stage, risking your very lives and livelihoods. And this same America, which tolerates all of this, is swaggering around the world, telling other people what they should be doing. Now, from crackheads to crackpots, I refer, of course, to the Donkey Derby, which is otherwise known as the leadership race for the Conservative Party top job, which comes with it a grace and favour residence called 10 Downing Street, because the leader of the Conservative Party, elected by just 160,000 people, almost all of them white, almost all of them over 70, almost all of them men, 160,000 heads, all of them filled with the same crackpot idea, will be picking the next Prime Minister of my country. And a Dutch auction has ensued between them about how much they can cut taxes, will cut taxes, even though they've spent the last 2.5 years increasing taxes. Tax after tax after tax, they voted for as cabinet ministers and as members of parliament. Now they're all going to cut tax, but only if you elect them as the leader of the Conservative Party. If you believe them, I've got a bridge here that I could sell you going very, very cheap. If you believe these promises that are being made by the sinister 6 candidates that are now left in this race, then there's no end to the credulity of the people of my country. I don't really care who wins, although let me declare an interest. When nobody else had ever heard of her, I backed Penny Mordaunt to be the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister of Britain at the extraordinary odds of 40 to 1. She is now the odds-on favourite. In fact, some bookmakers will not take your bet. Such a hot favourite has she become. So I'll make a pretty penny if Mordaunt is the next leader of the Conservative Party, but even that doesn't make me want her to be the next Prime Minister of Britain. Although whatever money I make, I'll put to good use in a good cause of damning every Conservative and damning every new Labourite. I say a plague on all of their houses and all of their leaders. But there's one candidate that is particularly dangerous. I won't go into all the arguments. I'm making daily rapid radio bursts about the Conservative leadership race. You can find it on my YouTube channel just underneath this broadcast. I did one on Jacob Rees-Mogg and one on the person I'm now turning to, Liz Truss. And I'll do, if you'll forgive the phrase, Penny Mordaunt tomorrow. Liz Truss is a clear and present danger to the peace of the world and to the very existence of my country. A pound shop Margaret Thatcher, a midget dwarf Maggie, who dresses up in some kind of bizarre psycho recreation, like Norman Bates's dead mother on the rocking chair at the top of the stairs. Every time you look at Liz Truss, she's dressed like a dead woman. Margaret Thatcher, same headscarf, same picture opportunities, sitting on top of the same tank, standing in front of the same flickering Union Jack, wearing the same fur hat in the summer in Red Square in Moscow. The only woman in Moscow wearing a fur hat in the early summer breeze in the Russian capital. This woman is our foreign secretary. She doesn't know the Baltic Sea from the Black Sea. She humiliated us in discussions with the Russian leadership by mixing up the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea. She's surrounded by thousands of foreign affairs experts and diplomats, ambassadors. She was 10 hours on an airplane when she could have looked at an atlas but didn't. She didn't know regions of Russia were not actually regions of the Ukraine. And worst of all, this day she pledged that if she becomes the Prime Minister, Ukraine will win the war against Russia, suggesting that geography is not her only shortcoming. She evidently doesn't know that our entire armed forces could comfortably fit into Villa Park in Birmingham with room to spare. But she's effectively declaring war on a nuclear-armed superpower in the Russian Federation, which with one multi-armed rocket in 6 minutes could turn the whole of this country to ash and incinerate every living being and living thing on this island. This is recklessness beyond anything that is tolerable. But in a way, worse than all of that, she is as thick as mince in a bottle. She doesn't even understand the things that she's talking about. She's trying to appeal to the pro-Brexit parts of the Conservative Party, which is the great majority of it. Although she campaigned fanatically against Brexit in the referendum in 2016. She was part of the Michael Heseltine John Major Brigade of Remainiacs. And she thinks we've forgotten it. Or at least she thinks that those of us who remember it will not be permitted by the mass media or big tech to remind you about it. And she may be right about that. She got 50 votes today, 50 MPs, including the aforementioned Jacob Rees-Mogg, voted for Liz Truss to be the next Prime Minister, a girl that would struggle to pass her GCSEs, in charge of Great Britain Inc., with a seat on the Security Council and a fleet of nuclear submarines at her command. Now, Penny Mordaunt did much better. But here's the rub. If all of the right-wing candidates were to merge their campaign, they could end up as the candidate in the final ballot, which goes out to the membership in the country. And the final ballot would be then between Truss and Rishi Sunak. And that's where real life would intrude. You see, everybody inside the British political beltway, everybody inside the politico-journalistic bubble in Westminster, London, SW1, wants Rishi Sunak to win. Why? Because he's a brown Blair. Rishi Sunak is the brown Blair. Just like Draghi is the Italian Blair. Like Rutte is the Dutch Blair. There's Blairs all over the place, including on the front bench of the Conservative Party. And there is no Blair like the brown Blair, Rishi Sunak. He's the richest man in Cretius. He is the richest man ever to participate in British political life. So you might at least say, well, he'll probably not take his salary and he won't fiddle his expenses. But oh, wait, his wife was fiddling her taxes while he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer of Great Britain, whose job was to collect Britain's taxes. His own wife sheltered billions of pounds overseas and said she was a non-domicile. She was married to the Chancellor of the Exchequer living in Downing Street, but she was non-domiciled, don't you understand, in Great Britain, even though she was living in Downing Street, the heart of the capital of Great Britain. So just because you're filthy rich doesn't mean you don't care about the grubby arts of making more money. But that's not my main objection to Rishi Sunak. My main objection to him is that he's only been in Parliament for 7 years, and he has already been the Chancellor of the Exchequer. His main aim in politics now is to take Britain back into the European Union. Of course, they won't call it that. They won't say, blow the bugles, roll the drums, we're going back cap in hand to Mrs. von der Leyen. No, they'll call it something different. We'll re-enter the single market, or at least we'll be brought alongside the single market. We will effectively embrace the European Union single market, and we'll have one foot once again back into the European Union. Why anyone would want to join a European Union that is actually on flames, where the Spanish government are helping to massacre Africans trying to climb over the fence into their country, when Rome is on fire as the taxi drivers threaten to blow the whole place up because of the revelations that their leaders have been corruptly in league with Uber to slaughter their own workforce, their own cab drivers, in the interests of an American multinational, although undoubtedly large sums of money in all European capitals, including in London, changed hands in order to facilitate the rise of Uber in our countries. The government of Bulgaria has fallen. The government of Albania is about to fall. The government of Italy is about to fall. Macron has lost his majority. Boris Johnson has lost his seat, and Joe Biden has lost his marbles. What could possibly go wrong for us? Unlucky enough to be living and trying to make a living in what is called the Western world at this time. Now, finally, little soldier Schultz. As Mark Simpson, a very clever man on Twitter, pointed out just a couple of hours ago on Twitter, with traditional Teutonic efficiency, Germany has just published a precise timetable for their national suicide, for their self-infliction of irreversible, total economic collapse. They have announced that on the 31st of August, they will no longer buy German coal. And on the 31st of December, they will no longer buy Russian oil. No Russian coal, no Russian oil by the end of August, by the end of December. At the same time, they have issued guidance to the people of Germany that henceforth they should wash in the shower, to make the shower shorter, I presume, only certain parts of their body, their armpits, their groin, thank God, and their feet, and then out of the shower, because the energy shortage in Germany is such that the German government is opening not food banks this winter, but warm banks, public buildings. They used to be known as libraries, where you can go and stay warm in Germany, in the economic powerhouse of Europe, in the great, once mighty Germany. Just wash your armpits and your groin and get out that shower. And don't switch your own heating on at home. Go to a public space, somewhere where you can huddle together with others, because we are not going to buy Russian coal or Russian oil. The German CBI, the Confederation of German Industries, has made it clear that the German industrial sector will grind to a halt over this winter because of these self-inflicted wounds that their own government has imposed upon them. And why? Why? On behalf of a country that was widely acknowledged, including particularly by Germany, as the most corrupt country in Europe, the Ukraine, before the war. The German government doesn't even want the EU to lend them any more money. They're so corrupt. But Germany's prepared to bankrupt its economy in support of that corrupt country called Ukraine. Here's how corrupt it is. And this, I promise, is my last point. What's the time? I've gone on for half an hour. This is my last point before I take your questions and contributions. Here's how corrupt they are. I said from the beginning of this conflict that supplying weapons, high-tech, highly portable weapons that would be useful to terrorists and criminals to the most corrupt country in Europe was a very dangerous idea. I said from the beginning, bank robberies, wages heists, terrorist attacks on airliners, the use of portable high-tech, devastating military weapons that a terrorist can drive around in their car boot would be the inevitable result of unchecked, untraceable, vast rivers, oceans of weapons being poured from Western countries into the Ukraine. Answer came there none. Derision from some. Until this week, you may say rather late in the day, Interpol made a statement which was almost word for word what I have been saying to you for the last 130 days. Interpol is desperately anxious that none of these weapons is being properly accounted for. Nobody knows where those weapons go. Did the Russians destroy them? Or did a Ukrainian thief sell them on the dark web? Well, now we know that it is both. Because the Ukraine actually sold for $800,000 a $12 million piece of military armory to Russia on the dark web. Russia bought $12 million worth of NATO weaponry for $800,000 from Ukraine on the dark web. Well, if they'll sell it to Russia, do you think they might sell it to one or other of the multifarious terrorist gangs that are out there? Or to Albanian criminals, Maltese gangsters, the Italian mafia, the Russian mafia, any of the gangster organized crime outfits that would certainly have uses to which they could put this kind of hardware. This is the Galloway Show. It's here every Wednesday at 10 p.m. UK time until the 12th of October. On the 12th of October, I hope that the midweek mother of all talk shows will resume, in this case at 10 p.m. UK time, so that more of our American brothers and sisters can join us. If you want to help ensure we have liftoff on October the 12th with an all singing, all dancing Moats 2, which you can phone, in which I can have guests, split screen, multiple cameras. If you want us back on a Wednesday with a full-scale mother of all talk shows, please give on the YouTube super chat. It's really easy. I see that some of you have already been doing it. Just go to super chat option on YouTube and give. Please give generously as you can, to ensure that on the 12th of October we have liftoff. Have I got any questions to answer? I don't know. Gayatri? Graham B says, Ike's fundamental philosophy that the moon is hollow with a cheese shell seems a bit off. I've never believed that the moon was made of green cheese, but I am in awe of the Deep Space Telescope, totally in awe of it. And as I gaze at it, I gaze in wonder that there are some fools who continue to say there's no God. I know that's not the answer you wanted, but it's my answer. Mousy Brown says, now we know that high-powered Americans raise drug-addled families. It ain't in the ghetto anymore. It's in the White House. What a fan. I wish I had said that. I wish I could have said what I said as pithily as Mousy Brown just said it. The good news is I shall in subsequent broadcasts. John Dorch says Donald Trump Jr. was high as a kite at the 2020 Republican National Convention. Did he video himself weighing the goods? Let's see if there's any more. Merck Type 8. Penny Mordaunt is a dummy. The WEF want her to win, so they will run Britain through her, their puppet. Actually, they want Liz Truss to win, but you're plainly confusing something. Because I predict that Penny Mordaunt will win, doesn't mean that I want her to win. I will oppose her as vehemently as any of the other candidates, and as vehemently as I would oppose Keir Starmer and his gang. Don't confuse intellectual, logical rigor and analysis with personal favoritism. You dummy. How many times have I got to tell you that? Penny Mordaunt will win because she is a younger, sexier, more beautiful version of Margaret Thatcher. And Tories like that. They gaze at her and they imagine that if they bend over for long enough, maybe she'll come and spank them in the way that they grew to like in their public school backgrounds. Maybe you don't know about the English upper class. Le Vice Anglais, or is it La Vice Anglais? How would I know? I came from a council house estate and never went to a fancy school. Hugh says, gives £8.99. Will this inflation kill fiat money? Will we have a new Bretton Woods, or will we return to sound money? Will gold or Bitcoin prevail? Hugh, I wish I knew the answer to these questions. Don't confuse me with somebody that knows everything. I don't. But the things I do know, I really, really really know. And I can spot a winning horse when I see one. I predicted, have I told you, the Scottish referendum result to the exact percentage point. I predicted the Brexit victory. I predicted Donald Trump's victory. And it is beginning to look like, at 40-1, I predicted Penny Mordaunt's victory. Let's see if there's any more. Ask Why says it just sadly goes to show that the USA has a drug problem that is out of control. One needs to ask why. What is so very wrong with US culture that people are taking that stuff? Very, very well expressed. And again, I wish I knew the answer. All I can say is it certainly ain't confined to America. Albert Roundtree says, I hope Biden remains president. He represents the decadent, rotten lies of the Yankee empire. Yeah, I see your point, Albert. But what if he stumbles and falls, maybe trips off his bike or trips over the red carpet and he's carrying the football in that briefcase that inadvertently pushes the button that brings about the end of the world? Think about it, mate. Albert, the risks are too high, man. Blunts and Otters gives $4.99. I'm sure there's something rude in that name. Biden admitted he is a Zionist while standing in Palestinian-occupied territory. How is the Biden-Israel policy any different from Trump's? Well, as his welcoming party made clear, he is the best friend Israel ever had in its entire history. He's the best Zionist of them all. Joe looked a bit uncomfortable, perhaps hoping that on his way to Saudi Arabia it would be better if this was obfuscated a little bit, but the Israelis were keen to press home their advantage. They knew they had a stooge on their red carpet, even if he didn't know what he was supposed to do next, and even if he couldn't read what he was about to commemorate in respect of the Holocaust. But you're right, he's not meeting any Palestinians on this trip. Can you believe it? He's in occupied Palestine, in Jerusalem, but he will not meet any Palestinians. And what can one say about the rulers of Saudi Arabia? That they are apparently ready to make a military, political, strategic alliance with Israel. How the good people of Saudi Arabia feel about that, we'll never know. Because if they expressed how they feel about it, they'd get their heads chopped off, even if they were only 14 years old when they did so. And speaking of heads being chopped, what will President Biden say to the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman about the American resident columnist on the Washington Post, Jamal Khashoggi, who wasn't just murdered by MBS, but was literally chopped into pieces and flushed down the drain of the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul? Anything to say about it, President Biden? Anything to say about it, Washington Post? Anything to say about it, Western journalists? You stinking hypocrites. Capitan Futuro 999 gives £8.99 to the Fighting Fund. Thank you, Captain. Aye, aye. Robert West gives £10. Thank you, Robert. What is Penny Mordaunt's stance on the Ukrainian war? I have no idea. She hasn't expressed one that I'm aware of. But again, it'll be as bad as most of the other Tory candidates. But it's likely that it will not be as bad as Liz Truss. So anybody but Truss, a surgical device that may turn out to be a fatal one. Patrick McCarthy gives $4.99. God bless you, Patrick, always. Thanks very much indeed. Bush Writer gives Canadian dollars 20. Thanks very much. Boris is going to be missed. He stopped the jab pass, stopped the lockdowns, rode out the massive wave of Omicron while maintaining free speech and open government. The UK has lost the Prime Minister they voted for. Well, you've been kind enough to donate 20 Canadian dollars, so I'll forswear from adumbrating each and every objection I have to each and every word that you have just written. But thank you very much for your kind donation. Let's see if there's any more. Patrick, I've got that one, $4.99. Mr. Loverman, I'm thanking for his generosity. Captain Futuro, $8.99. Is that a second $8.99 from the captain? If Russia gave its gas for free to the Europeans, would they accept it? Or are they so terminally hell-bent that they would not? Well, if my auntie had balls, she'd be my uncle. Russia's not going to give anybody oil and gas for free. Why should they? Why would they? Matt gives 20 euros. Thanks, Matt. After Reacher over Ukraine political elite defending Stefan Bandera, I've lost that one. Maybe it'll come up on my main screen. Yeah, there we are. I follow now your opinion on the Ukraine leadership, by the way. German energy crisis will be the result of the green ideology. Do you know it's only a year since the jamboree at COP26 in Glasgow, when a motorcade, 46 vehicles long, conveyed President Biden to the rostrum in Glasgow to demonstrate how committed he was to green policies and the environment. Do you recall the paroxysms of virtue signaling to which they committed us without asking our permission, of scrapping our boilers and destroying our industrial production, destroying our energy sector, closing our mines, closing our power stations, all in the name of the voodoo green magic? Where did it all go? 1 year later, the German government has just announced that German people will have to burn wood this winter to stay warm. That's if they've got a fireplace and if they've got access to wood. So much, so green. It's all turned brown so very, very quickly. Conrad VFR 750 gives £5. Thank you. Taiwan is set to be the next Ukraine, with the US keen to install and sell weapons to it right next to China. That'll never happen. China would act decisively to, how shall I put it, terminate any possibility of that happening. The United States oversteps the mark with China. Having failed in its war in Afghanistan and its war by proxy in Ukraine, it would go down to absolutely terminal defeat in the inevitable conflict with China that such an act would provoke. Any more? Have I got time? Yes, I do. Richard 7 says, to what extent, George, do you think the British public wish to hear the Russian side of matters? It's scandalous that the mass media are in lockstep with suppression. Is this World War II like? The difference in World War II is that we still had elections in World War II, and independent candidates who criticized the course of the war were able to stand for election and sometimes win election. Parliament still operated with two sides in the Second World War. Chamberlain was brought down during the Second World War and replaced by Winston Churchill. None of these things happen now because we are a one-party state. Two cheeks of the same arse sit opposite each other in the House of Commons, and in between them, in between the two cheeks, is the middle part called the Liberal Democrats. Pat gives £2 says, keep kicking, George, as long as God gives me breath, I'll keep kicking. Thank you very much. Speaking of kicking, Manchester United did well yesterday in Bangkok. Yay! We hold the Bangkok Cup, our first trophy under Eric. My wife's here, so I mustn't pronounce Dutch names wrongly. Erik ten Hag. Erik ten Hag is how you're supposed to say it. Matthew Howland. Mr. Galloway, when you were an MP, how much influence did the WEF have at that time, other than Blair's training? I'd never heard of them. I'm 7 years out of Parliament now. I'd never heard of the World Economic Forum or Klaus Schwab until comparatively recently. It was the Bilderbergers and the other globalists that held sway. And there's no doubt that they have existed for a very, very long time. Harry McLegs gives $10 US. If I'd been 100, I'd have showed you my own hairy McLegs. But as it's only 10, you'll just have to imagine them. Thanks for that donation. El Desierto. George Galloway, is Rishi the British Obama? That's quite an interesting comparison. He's not as good as Obama, not nearly as eloquent. And he doesn't look as good in a tan suit. And he definitely can't croon like Sam Cooke. But in a way, yeah, they're going to market him as, look how virtuous we are. We picked an Indian, a billionaire, married to the heiress to billions of our father's money, who doesn't even domicile in the street in London where she lived. Tomas gives €5. Thanks, Tomas. Thanks, George. Keeping me sane. Well, I'll be back, of course, on Sunday night, Tomas, at 7 p.m. for the official mother of all talk shows. It'll be a short, sharp summer show, 1 hour on Sunday, because I'm on holiday, despite how it looks here. But the following week, we'll go to 90 minutes on the mother of all talk shows. But this Sunday coming, a 60-minute show. Because I'm on holiday, staff are on holiday, a lot of you are on holiday, it's not really possible to do the whole 3 hours. But I'll be back, of course, on Sunday, Tomas. Many thanks to you. Gabriel gives £5. Thank you, Gabriel. Chitty, chitty, bang, bang. Angela Lansbury, relative of... Is she a relative of Penny Mordaunt? Murder, she wrote, related to the Labour Chancellor, 1929-31, Lord Snowdon, Establishment 11. No, Angela Lansbury was the daughter of George Lansbury, who was the leader of the Labour Party, only briefly, in the 1920s, and was anything but an establishment man, anything but. So don't traduce Angela Lansbury with any connection to Philip Snowden. And I'm not sure that Penny Mordaunt is related to any of them. I haven't read that. She's a Roman Catholic. She is the mother of 2 daughters. She's peaches and cream, and she'll be up against the Brown Blair. And knowing the membership of the Conservative Party, as I think I do, because I know my country and its people well, and I know what the Conservative Party membership is like, my guess is they'll go for the blonde peaches and cream rather than the Brown Blair. What do you think? Mr. 13FNG gives 10 Canadian dollars. Thank you very much. Thank you for always supporting Palestinian human rights. We love you, George. Thank you so much. I'm going to do a broadcast on Palestine quite soon, actually, probably whilst Biden is in the region. Goose Creek gives 10 euros. Goose, thank you. God bless you for that. Very, very much appreciated. And all your support on a virtually daily basis on Twitter. A Russian name, 4.99 euros. The Truth and the News with the only George Galloway. Many thanks to you. I'll call you Boris. I don't know what your name is, but it's very kind. I have many Russian friends. I'm just not Russian state affiliated. Anthony McKen says, wasn't it always the plan that Boris would step down and give way to Sunak? No way. I heard about this a long time ago. Sunak is a careerist. He must think that being prime minister means you're prime minister of just London. Not at all, Anthony. That's a conspiracy theory too far. Boris Johnson hates Rishi Sunak probably more than he hates any other person on this earth. So it certainly was no plan. Boris intended to stay for 20 years as the British Parliament, believe me. Matt, not me. I bet Gigi is the best dad. Well, my little boy is here. Am I the best dad? He's shaking his head, yes. Very loyally, very loyally. Give them a shout out. Shout. Yes, he says. Thanks very much. Gabriel says, where is the Stop the War Coalition? Who? Poor Ukraine being used as a pawn. Who loses most? The Ukrainians. How is this sensible? Even if you're against Putin, he wants dialogue. When will we wake up? Not anytime soon, I fear. I've got time for one or two more, and then I'll need to get my little boy to bed. Soot says, southern Sweden's elderly are going through hell, dying alone in their apartments because of the class war and sanctions. Well, that's very serious news indeed. Thank you for conveying that. And Patrick gives $9.99. Have you been following the January 6th hearings in the States? And what do you think the end result will be? Will Trump be incarcerated and out of political commission? Well, there's a real danger for Trump of that. I would caution against it to the American government. I think the United States is close enough to civil war without gratuitously inviting an outbreak of armed violence in the country and further damage to the social and political fabric of the state. More sinister is the attempt to pretend that Trump no longer has any support in the country, especially commissioned polls by TV stations and publications that obviously hate Trump and don't want to see him back, are talking about his support plummeting and maybe trying to arrange a trade-off. Biden will not run again. If Trump doesn't run again, let's make a fresh start, that kind of thing. If that's their game, then they run quite a serious risk of somebody much worse than Donald Trump becoming the next president of the United States. Fat Mikey Pompeo, although I'm not sure he's fat anymore, he's still like one of the guys on the set of The Sopranos. Fat Mikey or Ron DeSantis, the leader of the Florida mob. These would be Republican Party presidents that would be much, much, much worse for America and the world than Donald Trump would be. That's my point of view anyway. Thanks for watching. God willing, I'll see you on Sunday at 7 p.m. UK time for the mother of all talk shows. And keep an eye open for my rapid radio bursts about the Conservative Party. It's good night from me, from Torin, and from Gayatri.